She's beauty, she's grace. Her crown is gold. Her mane is all the colors of the rainbow to distract you from her face with hollow eyes. The imperial fire is gone. The moon is pockmarked by anything but a sickness. The Everfree sits in ruins, all because of her. Her home is gone, her sister too. She tells herself over and over, all her fault. Home is in ruins, sister is banished, all her fault. There are so many scars, and the worst are the ones none can see. She maintains the pretty smile because deep down, she did know what went wrong. And the snow up north chilled her too. The sun is cold, her eyes are hollow. The small stone city where she stays is more alive than she, who lay crying on the floor until morning. All because it was her fault. Hours later, they say she's better, simply because her crying stopped. Her eyes won't see anything but the moon, resting below the horizon. But she's so much colder, colder than snow, colder than space. She's as cold as death. She's beauty. She's grace. Here she stands in the garden, all alone. How noticeable that is now. How will she ever learn to get used to this? The statue does not respond. She does not expect it to. She needs a home, somewhere that won't break her heart every time she sees it. Now that her constant is gone, she needs company. She wants to define herself by lying, by placing all the rooks, mages, knights, and pawns around her. Brick by brick, she'll build another wall, try to blink away the black and white, like she did her tears. They'll build walls too, ponies that were only ever hers. It's her own fault. The gray stone will go, painted over by a layer of white, if only to reassure herself that she isn't the villain, despite what her feelings say. Green gardens because she loved to be outside. She'll try to pretend that everything's alright until she leaves alone. To her, that was such an ugly word. She'll leave alone to find the start of the thread that became so knotted. And when she returns, she'll smile, warm on the outside, for all to see, cold, fickle heart, until she finds yet another constant to share her light. She'll smile all the while. They build a castle in her absence, a shrine to an unsure god who cannot bear to go unloved by a single soul, to be alone. Up north, it's where she heads, all alone, is where she led the little ponies from. She wasn't alone then. The snow almost warms her. She just tries. She tries so hard. For once, she doesn't want to think. Blank. She tries to make herself blank, numb. But she can never forget, never close her eyes without seeing her sister scream again. Why doesn't that smile falter? Losing. She didn't win. No pony did. They all lost. She can't find the black and white. She wishes it was there. She wishes it was nothing. She gives up after a while. There's so much quiet here in the sky. She hates it. Or she could, if she could still burn, still feel right after all of this. Her throat is too sore to sing. A short trip alone to prepare her for everything that comes after. Day after day, night after night. This occasion is but a little slice of history, and history repeats. Day after day, night after night. She doesn't sleep. She doesn't want to see her. She wants to see her. Confusion fades into nothing at all as she sits in the snow, alone, day after day, night after night. Snow tries to hinder her. Ice flies through her mane until even she can't see the colors as she makes her way north. It's just like it was before. They learned of a king in a shining empire and sealed him in ice. Their fillyhood friend usurped their nation after they thought they'd never see him again. And the statue in Canterlot was testament enough to what happened after. Before the elements, the moon, she only screams in memories now. It's nothing like before. Two little fillies. If they were so alone, how had they been so happy? The questions are like the snow. They flow around her. She can't make them go away. But she ignores each and every one, just so she might press on. She won't look back. Not yet. She's not there yet. It's been centuries since she's been there, the land of false smiles, where laughter was unheard of, kindness too, generosity never without a price, honesty foreign, loyalty blind, magic barren, wasted, squandered, twisted. She remembers how she had been there, how she had smiled like them, how she had thought like them, how she had believed it all. The snow was like the questions. She could ignore it all. but it will still eat at her, hoofstep after hoofstep. It feels like more of her is vanishing all over again. In this cold shell of a god, could any kindness bloom? Just over the horizon, she sees the telltale sign, the Great Barrier of North, all of Equestria, the waste where a crystal land was torn off the map, the fledgling nation of Trotland. The only thing farther into this hateful, harmony-lacking waste is the true valley of the tribes, not the wizard's little slice, rotting away like the rest of a history that she wants to forget, and almost did. Vicious rock that tries to separate her from answers. It cuts her legs until the blood is numbered like the rest of her hours upon hours of walking, stopping, wanting to turn back. She falls to the ground where she reaches a point where one as tall as her can look and see all. She remembers too, and that's what breaks the ice, at least for now. Her raw scream is lost in the wind, but she finally cries again. Before she left this valley, everything was laid out. Where to go, what to do, who to talk to. Row by row, she dedicated her life as well as another's. Each choice was the link in a chain. She embraced them. Her sister struggled with each and every link until she snapped, like the very metal that held them both, dragging them further down. She wanted a crown resting upon each of their heads, metal as shiny and regal as her heart, lusted after by those who would stare, speak of every appearance she made, praise, gossip, made idle chatter. She was surrounded by mindless humming. The metal jewelry she wore from there and after, as still as the fickle heart within her breast. Long before a crown rested on her head, she was as cold as only a newcomer could be. Her and her sister, Earth, Pegasus, Unicorn, they were neither. These ponies called them monsters. So she selected the one that she knew. She had some kind of knowledge, was away from it all, living in a thin tower that tried to seek the clouds in vain. From there, she did everything, tried to master magic's form, understand these ponies, her deeds nearing the cost of herself. Her vanity dictated her looks, surrounding her like the dresses she wore. Her tongue adopted all their words without a second thought. Her smile never faltered. Her eyes left her sister to focus on the crown she would claw away. Bright, shining, false power. She might have again one day, to guard the mortals from the realm. that starved them, that emptied their minds and their hearts, where the snow blinded their eyes, and even she was not spared. She lost her little shadow in the storm. She told her, "Stop being so selfish. Grow up." And everything else, every bit of venom, they're not coming back. Everything she thought to be true, or at least as true as it needed to be. And after it all, her smile never faltered. Shining bright, what he never was in life he was after. Fame, glory, he was a legend. All for nothing. A life that fades into obscurity. Details blurred like the horizon in a storm. A home in the mountains, so far north where all is in ruins. Where lives crumbled like the houses they lived in. Until it was only the skeletons of rooms that remained, buried under the snow, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Here was the hero who thought of none but his ambitions, who never laughed, never smiled once, and was never modest enough to at least be apathetic to every pony else's woes. He scribbled magic that would never be completed, and was as above the stagnant minds of the peasants of that day, like the stars were to the clouds. In his tower home, where the Sun Princess aimed to go, there had lived 4 youths in shared misery. Together, in name only, they shared only the valley in which they were trapped. The green-maned Erin filly, who only ever bowed her head to stare at the mud. Her hood hid her mane, which drew so many gazes, and she only wanted to fade. 2 little goddesses drifting apart, one to the shadows, where she saw only what was and what could be, and a sadness to come. She worried alone, trying to live, cast into the shadows, the princess of the dark, before she was even crowned. The other saw only what she wanted, a shining kingdom to be, ponies to talk to once again, a place to define herself, a place to forget, and a place to belong. She believed what she was told, abided by the rules, only wanting to build a kingdom to thaw these frozen hearts, while her own froze over, the broken pieces sealed but not mended. This was the hero, this bearded wizard who only influenced her own petty behavior, furthered each wasted smile. She made for the crown and every blind move that led to her current state. Alone, her sight restored, but she was oh so alone. The wizard with a belled cap was anything but. Separation by another name. Invisible walls to keep them apart and keep them away from the world. A barrier to block their powers. As soon as two tired fillies had stepped inside, weighed out the possibility of escape, caged them in a little valley. The wizard would keep the little goddesses, their horns and wings. Her waving mane marked them as trophies, burdens, ignored experiments and nothing more. Pieces to ponder, mysteries to boast of. Of course, she noticed first the charm that made them dizzy while standing still, so even the snow seemed to fly crooked. Her eyes, such perceptive things, the color of neither daytime sky or the world in bloom. Those eyes that saw something beyond what was in front of them. They picked up on everything first. The paths of escape, the concealed exits. She first knew that the wizard had cast a charm to steal the escape from their minds, swirl the memory like the stars in his mark. A short, frantic scream, the bluebird of happiness seeing their invisible cage, shouted her accusations at the wizard for bringing them here, at her for allowing it to happen. Wings unfurled, she took off for the clouds, for the mountains, for anywhere but where they were, quicker than any eye could follow. A rebellious bolt of lightning, fierce and bright, charging the air, longing for her feral freedom. She slammed into a wall unseen by all but her freedom-loving heart. Little blue angel, feathers burned black at the edges, falls to the ground, crying out when she's grounded once again. Sides molted with purple bruises, pebble-inflicted cuts, broken feathers trampled into the stone. She looked at her with tears in her eyes, which asked all the questions that she had no answers to. Her mouth hurling the truth at them both, long before she would ever know it. Liar, bigot, hero, the wizard. He rises above the sun, who can hardly stutter out a few words of speechless comfort to the defiant one. This wizard was all they had. He took them in where others had cast them out. He looms over her, she who has no crown to shield her, to protect anything anymore. Braces for all the raging shouts that he yells into the snow-filled air. He tells her to make that one be quiet. She's too injured to fly. Her legs are streaked with blood. To this day, she cannot understand how she found the strength to stand, to endure anything so cruel. Because she didn't. Before her eyes, clouding her heart, her mind every part of her. She sees the little shadow that she loved, that she shielded, that she took everything for. The little shadow who still had hopes and dreams intact, even when she could barely stand. She didn't dream. She was a good filly. She did what she was told. She forgot herself. She wanted a life all her own. Thin gold thread, little ray of sunlight, takes no more. Forgets everything in one moment. A furious scream from the bearded stallion is all it takes to wedge each little bit of her distant heart apart, once and for all, to make her cave into the little voices that she always held at bay. Doubts, whispers, anything but truth. It's why she listened to them in the first place. She doesn't need any more encouragement. Nothing matters. There's too much crying, too much screaming. All her little voices chant on and on. Her hoof is already flying as the wizard's cry rings out.
Either you hit her or I do.
Ugly, furious words, followed by an angry shriek of her own. Angry, twisted, guttural thing that dwarfs a dragon's roar in her clouded mind. Eyes that now see past the bruise on the little shadow's face. Only a shadow. Go the little whispers she'll bury when she sleeps. She's only a shadow now. You're finally free. Free of what they never said. She never stopped to ask, but she still remembers the dreaded howl of everything to come. Her shadow's pained call, heralding the misery and despair, which like the snow would surround them all. It was the memory of the wolves who in their forest echoed the call immediately after the elder's silhouette overshadowed the screaming angel. The whole valley shook. In the present moment, she stared at a hole she had burned in the centuries-old wall, as clear as glass and as strong as hate. She was here again, a temporary puncture closing behind her, and a single thought in her mind. After all, the wizard had one thing right: divide and conquer. How far they had fallen. Support me on Patreon and Ko-fi. Links in the description. Thanks for listening and be sure to subscribe. Good night, every pony.